Okay, so we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for a conversation with filmmakers Pungsoy Rose Nakorn-Sawan and Ekta Mittal as part of the Embodied Arts Festival hosted by Oyun Berlin. My name is Sana, and I have curated the film program for this festival. I'm so honored and grateful that both the directors could join us, as well as indebted to them for sharing their stunning films, Nakorn-Sawan and Birha, with us. Hope you all had a chance to watch them. Before we start, I wanted to give a little background into the concept of the film program that I put together. This film program continues to be a journey of self-reflection for me, starting from scratch on what embodiment and even memory meant to me outside of inherited ideas, and to discern for myself what embodied memory felt like in my own body. It has not been an easy process, but I was grateful that through these films and also my research, and practice, I was able to hold space and acknowledge the emotions that came up within me. I began my reflection on embodied memories, inspired by the poetry of an Indian author, Meena Kandasamy, the writings of an American author, Christina Crosby, and the art of Balbir Krishnan, looking specifically at the emotions of loss and grief. Their work, along with the selected films in the program, helped me map new areas of inquiry and pose questions away from sort of a conventional outlook on the linear notions of loss's predestined path, especially in a culture frantic for resolution. And instead, I tried to look at loss as holding social, political, and aesthetic implications for the body, including my own. A loss that does not rely on linearity, but that is profoundly intimate from the deep space and time of the self, and one that is birthed from the deepest parts of my own body and time. Moreover, from this position of embodied knowing, I wondered whether engaging and re engaging with loss could generate sites for memory and history and rewriting of the past and also reimagining of the future. And could a re engagement with loss in this embodied way become paradoxically the condition of new anti colonial hope and agency? I focused through the films on storytelling from new voices, especially those of women. And the films look at loss held by different bodies. And hopefully, it has allowed or will allow the viewers of the films to be to meditate on loss being inseparable from what remains. The conversation today is being streamed live via Oyun's YouTube, Facebook, and Vimeo channels. So thank you all for joining us on these various platforms. Some basic housekeeping tips before we go into the conversation. For those of you who are on the Zoom call, please mute yourself for the duration of this conversation. And there will be a chance at the end to ask your questions directly to the directors. For those of you watching the live stream, please feel free to send in your questions via the chat, and we will share them with the directors at some point. Please let me know which director you have addressed your questions to, since we have two of them today, Rose and Ekta. Before we begin our conversation on their work and their films, I would like to introduce both my guests, starting with Pungsoy Rose Nakorn-Sawan, the director and writer of Nakorn-Sawan. A graduate from the motion picture and still photography department of the Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok, Rose's short film Swimming Pool won several awards at student film festivals. In 2011, she began her career as a film producer, assistant director, and screenwriter working on award-winning films such as 36 and The Isthmus. In 2014, she received the DAD scholarship and moved to Germany to study at the University of Fine Arts Hamburg. In her directorial debut, Nakorn-Sawan, Rose blurs the binary lines between memory, fact, and fiction in a delicate contemplation on the meaning of life in the presence of death. In this hybrid film that was conceived as her graduation film for her master's degree, documentary footage from the filmmaker's life is combined with the fictional story of a young woman returning home after the passing of her mother to scatter her ashes in the heavenly city. Critics have called Nakorn-Sawan at once inventive, intriguing, and introspective in its meditation on love, loss, and memories, and the challenge of transforming personal grief into poignant art. Could the Oyen team please show the trailer of Nakorn-Sawan, please? Thanks.
Camila.แต่แกเก่งนะแกไม่ร้องไห้เลย
มันก็เป็นอดีตนะ
รูมไม่ได้ชัดเลย
ฮะ
รูมมันไม่ได้ชัด
Talvi's Birha poetry. The film searches for missing people who left their homes to work in faraway cities and have still not returned. The locations are not marked, the characters are not named. Birha situates itself in a season of waiting and a climate of uncertainty. The film makes a radical counter narrative to the process of grieving, of one not being this clean and neat emotion, and hauntingly yet realistically depicts a collective of complicated emotions of bodies experiencing similar things in a myriad of different ways. Could the Oyen team please show the trailer of Birha?
ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਗਾੜੀ ਮੈਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਚੁੱਕੀ ਹੁਣ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਵੀ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਜੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਪਤਾ ਕਰੀਏ ਹੁਣ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਆ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਵੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ ਅੱਗੇ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀ ਚੱਕਰ ਬਣਿਆ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ
ਕੁਛ ਇੱਥੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਸੀ ਬਾਹਰ ਉਡਾਂਦੇ ਜਾਣਾ ਬਾਹਰ ਜਾਣਾ ਬਾਹਰ ਚਲੇ ਗਿਆ ਕਦੇ ਆਂਦਾ ਸੀ ਮੈਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਜਾਣਾ ਚਲਿਆ ਗਿਆ
if you could tell me a bit about the titles that you have chosen for your films and what they signify to you in relation to the topic of loss and memory. Rose, do you want to go first with the title of your film?
The title of my film, like Nakorn-Sawan, is the city. I mean, it's the city in Thailand where there's a kind of the river that come together, and it's become like the, how to say, the, oh, I cannot remember the English name, like the big river that go to the main river of like that flow into Bangkok. So somehow, and at the point where many river gather together, it's become the belief that this area will be the path to the heaven. And there's the belief from like Buddhism that if someone die and we burn them, right, and we got the ashes, and it would be nice if we spread the ash into the water, like the river, the ocean. And this city in Nakorn-Sawan is the city that when my like some of the member of the family die, we will go there. I mean, we gather the family and we go there and we take a boat trip, and then we do the ceremony, like kind of, how do you say, the last goodbye. To someone who died. And I really like the name. I mean, I'm not how to say, I didn't live in that city, but somehow the city is kind of the hub. Like, for example, if you go to the north, like from Bangkok, you have to stay there like 2 or 3 hours, like if you go by bus, because they're the hub for eating or rest in the night. And the name, like the meaning is heavenly city. So Nakorn is like city, and Sawan is heaven. And then I really like the word that it's in between. I mean, and the movie itself portray the visual of in between death and life, in between city and heaven, and some kind of that belief. So I really interest in this name, so I put it like the name of the film. Yeah.
And you also have a dash in the name.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that hyphen?
The hyphen is like, it's in between. I mean, normally it's like how to say, there's no hyphen.
Yeah.
But I put it because it's really separate from city and heaven, death and living. Yeah.
Interesting, which also then ties into sort of Ekta Birha, no? Like this in between of spaces. Can you tell us a bit about your title?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very complex title to actually use for the film, but I just dared it because I felt I also have my understanding of this word. So Birha, unfortunately, can't be translated in English. And there are many meanings of Birha. So as you know that there are so many different languages in India. So there is the Birha is a form of poetry. And the form of poetry in many different cultures are poetry of separation. So, for example, the way Birha is understood in Bihar is very different from how Birha would be understood, let's say, in Punjab or other parts of the country. So, essentially, I was drawn to the title Birha because one is, I just feel the condition of loss, death, and missing, I don't think is something that can be translated in words very easily. And thankfully, I had the opportunity to stumble upon the poetry of Batalvi, which is again within the poetry of Birha. This comes under a Punjabi Sufi kind of, what you call umbrella, where it tries to move away from kind of attachment and somewhere moves towards a spiritual journey of sorts, which kind of has very different understandings of that it is a continuation. It works with ideas of impermanence. It works on, it tries to build in this value of, that nothing is really permanent. And how does one then experience that loss? Because you can never, you cannot escape it. So every single person living any creature living would experience Birha. Otherwise, you actually are as good as not living, is one of the things they mention in the Punjabi Sufi poetry. And somewhere I felt this line of poetry helped me with the kind of subject that I was grappling with, because I was meeting various different workers, migrant workers who had traveled from different parts of the country to build a city like Bangalore, and over time had become close friends with them. And going back to their homes made me see a very different kind of, uh, made me explore different perspectives of loss, and this whole idea of what happens when someone leaves, and when they return, do they come back as the same person? Obviously not. So what happens in between that time of leaving and returning? And there is always a return, but there's always also this idea of no return. So it's kind of a suspended time in the context of me making that film. So I thought Birha would be an appropriate title, because I would still think it is not attached to just the Sufi poetry, but it's also a word that I think is colloquial. So if I say Birha in India, people can relate to it. Anyone in India would be able to understand Birha. So in Kannada, in Bangalore, we'll say Viraha, which is kind of like Birha. It's the same. It has the same essence. So yeah. So it's very sad that sometimes when I'm compelled to translate it in English, it's absence, and it just does not convey anything that this particular idea means. So it's like an idea. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting also when you told me, oh, please name it as Birha, because absence doesn't do justice at all. And that's really nice that both your films haven't, like, Rose hasn't called her film Heavenly City, because I think Nakorn-Sawan, in a sense, has so much more depth, and Birha has so much more depth to it than the translated versions of the words.
Yeah.
Interesting, because you also brought up you touched upon the genesis of your project, and could you elaborate a bit on how this started? I mean, you've been working on this from, I think, the first short films that you made, working with migrants, and then went on to make Birha, and most recently Gumnam Din. Can you talk about the genesis of your film?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief, because I'm trying to compress 10 years.
Don't have to be brief. We have time.
Yeah, but I think it's a very long journey, and the films are very, very important markers in that sense of this journey, that I think is an introspective one. And it started off from us being back from a city called Bangalore, which is in the southern part of India. And of course, all cities are going through this massive transformation. So the metro is coming at the cost of various people's homes being displaced, markets being demolished. It affected the local economy heavily. They cut down a lot of trees. And I think 12 years ago, we were very, very affected by the fact, because I think we have an attachment to where we live, and some idea of home that we have, that everyone I think would have in general. So it was at the time when all of this massive transformation was taking place in Bangalore, and I think we were at all the protests trying to go against the metro, which is the metro rail that connects the city now in various different ways. And I think we were quite disappointed with the fact that it was too small a group fighting for such a large thing to be stopped. It's like there's so many investments, and there's a lot of pressure on governments to do certain things. And I mean, there's no public consultation, there's no public participation. So it's very little stake that we had. And I think successive failures in the protest space made us only more angry and sad that we are actually quite powerless. It's also an acceptance of how much you can do in that space. And I think we tried to look at that as both my friend and me, Yashu and me, kind of met at that same juncture to try and figure out what could we do to address this. So I think we continued to protest, but we also went back to some of the workers who were building the city, who are not from Bangalore. So they were all from different parts of the city, different parts of the country, mostly from the northern parts. who came, and India is a really large city. So I mean, just within my own state or like a small border that we have, I mean, I've still not been able to cover, you know, the whole state. So you can imagine how, so people are coming from the northern parts to the city because it's cheap labor. You don't need to, I mean, contractors will not encourage unionization. You're not traveling with your family. There's no woman. There are no children, so they can work overtime. So those kind of exploitative measures were taken to ensure that the work would get done very quickly. And at the same time, we thought it would be nice to talk to them and understand what is it for them to think of, what is their idea of home, given that they are coming to this city for the first time in their lives, mostly new migrants who've never come to the southern part. So what they eat is very different from what we eat. Many of the workers would carry their own spices from home, and it is not possible to find a lot of things that you get here. So it's from very, very, very little things to very large things. So it started with that, and we made 3 short films, which kind of looked at the idea of looking at workers itself as kind of present and absent, because it was one is that you would have these kind of the metro line running, you would see the construction, but you would never see the workers. You don't know where they live. So they're mostly cordoned off in very transient spaces in some backyard of the city, or very makeshift kind of colonies, and mostly all men. So we kind of did actually make inroads into trying to understand what was really going on. And these 3 short films we made kind of gave us the ability through our friendships, because we spent a lot of time trying to meet them whenever they could, and kind of looked at not making a standard film or representing them in the standard way of, we don't get the wages. We didn't find them, they didn't appear in our conversations as victims. So we kind of explored their identities as lovers, as philosophers, as people who were fathers, people who were, poets, some people wrote. So we kind of explored various different identities around the worker, and also played on this disidentification of the worker itself. So what happened was, for example, one of the films called Presence looks at the metaphor of a ghost. So is the worker a ghost? Is he there? And if he is there, we wanted the film to haunt the public or the viewer forever. Like, the haunting needs to stay. Whether you see the worker or not, he's still there. His spirit is still there. Then he has the power to haunt you. So because the usual representation in newspapers would be, usually you hear about workers when they're either dead, or when they're, there's some kind of accident, or you never hear about workers. So we started doing that. And I think so Birha was my solo journey, and I kind of decided to travel back to some of the families of where the workers came from, who were very close friends of mine. So over like 7-8 years, I had become friends with them. So I started going back to Punjab, Chhattisgarh, different parts of the country, and tried to see what it might mean to, where are they coming from? What does this longing mean? Because they would speak to us a lot about what were things back home, what were the memories that they were grappling with, how would they grapple with not having something that they really wanted. So then I everything just, because I was not sure what longing, I didn't feel satisfied with the 3 films that I had understood anything about longing, and I wanted to go deeper into this idea of what does longing really mean. And in a way, I feel that kind of stitched up with also personal losses in my life of my grandmother and my father. And it came at a very interesting juncture of kind of accepting their deaths, and also kind of speaking to people who are experiencing this along with me in a very different context. So I couldn't pin it down and say, okay, this is what happened in Punjab, this is what happened in Chhattisgarh. It's not about the particulars. I think it's a kind of some kind of a shared space of sharing, and I don't know, just something that also doesn't last forever. I think it came together with Birha, and I think I also had to let that go. So yeah, that's in brief. And Gumnam Din is a carryover of Birha, and I'm hoping my next film will go deeper into exploring longing, but from, again, a very different perspective. Because this time I had the opportunity to meet the women. So when I went back to the villages, I met only the women. So there were villages with just only women. The men have all left to work. So it was quite an eye-opener to learn very many different things as to how do they deal with, and they're all very young. Its age group is what, 18 to 30, 35 years. So it's very young, young wives and young mothers and young grandmothers even. So yeah.
Yeah, and that sort of also then to come to you, Rose, and the genesis of your film is a very personal topic that I think a lot of us can relate to. Do you want to talk a bit about how the film came about?
Actually, I think I can borrow Ekta word. Like she told like about the journey. So somehow it's making film is like my journey too. Actually, it's come from my thesis. I mean, I really interested in kind of how to say, like when you record things or like your diary, or somehow even you are like when I studied in Germany, I feel like my connection between me and my mom like getting closer somehow. Like we talk more, but I mean, did like really like not talking on phone, but somehow like text or photo. And then I really think like photo like become something like it's kind of a proof of existence somehow. Like when she woke up and she sent me a photo of like making Murray, something like that, it's become like, okay, the morning routine. And I mean, the time in Germany is like come after that. So when I woke up, oh, okay, she got up already somehow. And then it's become a ritual. And then one day if she like didn't send me a photo, so I know that, okay, that's something like, okay, she's sick or she doing like not so good, something like that. So I really like interested in this kind of thing, like the photo, the proof of existence, like without any talking or just a recording, like personal recording. So when I come back, like, I mean, in just a break. And then I asked her like, okay, where's the photo, like the album photo of the family, something like that. And then I mean, it's like digging the archive, but it's your own like family archive somehow. And then you found your parent life before you were born. And then somehow it surprised me like, oh, this scene you haven't seen, like you never thought that this did happen before. So it starts from that okay, maybe the thing happens in the photo before, so it's real before, but now it's not real. Can we say that it's not real? And like, so I'm start from that point to write. I mean, to write, it's just like the description of the photo. And I select some photo and try to like, how to say, try to visualize it again in kind of fiction. That the first project. And then during the pre-production before the shooting, I mean, I'm parallel, like it's kind of the love story of my mom and my dad, but I rewrite it again from the photo. But during the process of that, my mom like went to the hospital, and I mean, she got, it's like a symptom of cancer for a long time, and then she passed away during the pre-production. So it's kind of a time for, okay, I won't do the project. I mean, that time is not good. So I break, and then I go back to Germany. And somehow, like, I realized that the time of being in Bangkok with the funeral, you cannot, I mean, you have no time to think, like, what's really happened. You have to do the thing and stuff with the funeral and everything. Like, you get busy all the time. But once you, like, sitting at the table and, okay, my mom's gone. And it's like, she's really gone. Like, no text, no photo. So it's time for, like, a real mourning time. That, okay, I don't know what to do somehow. So I stopped to write the film, and okay, maybe this time is not so good. But one day, like, my friend like just called me from Bangkok, like, hey, we are doing kind of a short story. It's like we will making a book. Do you like kind of interested to write a short story, want something like that? You can write anything, like you go to travel and you write something. And then I think it's a chance like, okay, I should do something or I should do anything that to distract me. And then and then I end up with a short story called Nakorn-Sawan, like the city. And that's the first time that and the story is about the family that like went to the city just to like to do the ceremony of the spreading the ash, like the last goodbye that I told. And when I read the story again, it's like, oh, it's here. I mean, like after the morning time and everything, this is kind of physical stuff that I really, is it called memory? I don't know, or what it's called, like maybe it's kind of body of something or proof of something. And then and when after reading the short story, I call my producer that, okay, I will do the film again. But I mean, I really don't know, after that it become a disaster somehow, not disaster of the production, but for myself. To really, okay, like you have to watch the how to say, the footage, and then I just grab some footage from my old, like it's just from mobile phones and handycam and something like that, and like spread the ads, like, okay, what I have in my hand, and then I try to, I don't know, edit and make it like collapse together, and then see how the story lacing together, so it's become the film. Yeah, but I mean it is just a pre-production and production, but I think the film is like really made in the editing too, like in the post, like okay, this footage is going in and going out, which one should be left, which one should be like, okay, just throw it away, something like that. And if you watch that, some part that I just like throw in, like just 10 minutes, like the last 10 or 15 minutes later, it's just like the last day of the editing, that okay, I will look into my external again, like it's just like maybe this one, I don't know, like the old one that I record some of my mom voices, like we talk on Skype, and then I just randomly recorded her, and then I think it's really nice to listen to the sound, and it's become, I mean, the body, if you said again. And I think it's really when Ekta say haunted, I really like the word like haunt, and one of my audience said like, okay, you know, like when you do the film, it's haunt you too. And like, oh yeah, really, it's really haunt me. I mean, it's not negative word, I mean, yeah, but somehow it's, yeah, like it's really interested when you talk about making film, like keeping something, even it's gone, it's like a photo, when you capture the moment, and making film, it's past already, but somehow it's still there.
Totally. I mean, I think that's what's so interesting about film, sorry to interrupt, and photos as a body, it embodies memory as such within your film and photo. And the usage of photos in both your films is very, very poignant. I mean, both of you have used photos a lot. Ekta, you open the film with, you know, this incredible shot of the lightning and the photo, kind of, you see this photo. And in your film, Rose, there's a collage of photos that you show of various people. I think there are even people from your crew whose photos you show, and they both are there. I wanted to talk to you about your editing process, because you mentioned about it, Rose, saying that, you know, you finally put together a lot of stuff during the editing. And I wonder if for you, you know, having to go through the footage that you took yourself through all these years of your family and your mother, did the inevitability of what had happened, which is the passing of your mother, like finally sink in during that process of editing? Because you finally get to see all of the pieces that you've been shooting, the fictional and the documentary together. And the same for Ekta. I mean, I wonder if you can talk about your editing process, because there's so many emotional landscapes that you look at, Ekta, throughout your film. And how was it for you as a process to put the film together? So Rose, if you can just start on the editing and how you felt.
Yeah, I think the first editing is from the script already. I mean, when I write, I mean, there's some like, okay, the first sequence I just write, for example, like, okay, this is fiction. So I write, okay, it's the sun come, blah, 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 and the boat's coming. And then the next sequence, it's be the footage. So I write it like the fiction part. So somehow I see the kind of the draft before, and then I edit the first draft, and then I talk with Lee, who is the main editor, later. And then I think it's really nice really to have another editor to help you, or to be the main one, to be the eyes for you, because when you see the footage, you see it's not a footage, it's your memory. So somehow everything is, oh, it's value, it's precious, it's, oh, I cannot put it out. So he will help me a lot to like select it somehow, like what's really meaningful in the way of storytelling, not the emotional one. I mean, you can put some footage like that relate to you, like really related, and no one understand. Yes, but somehow there are another, like I think 50% that it should be told in the how to say, universal way, that at least people can feel it. So I think in the editing process, it's more like, for me, it's like meditation. You know, when you see death like again and again and again, and first you be that you are a daughter of a mother who lost, and then later you become a director. Okay, this footage is not good, it's bad. And the other part, you become an observer, like, okay, what is going on of this 10 minutes? I really like, can the audience get or not somehow? So it really works for me to work with this kind of three status, like fighting together, and there's an editor to gather and help to edit it in the final part. And as I told you, like there are a lot of like sequence that it's come during the editing process. So I didn't plan before. For example, I just go through my old external and, oh, this is nice. It is, ooh, I haven't planned before. And it's really some kind of like experiment for me to like to put this in, and, oh, it's okay, maybe it's work. Okay, just put in another way around, and, oh, it's better. So it's more like experiment between me and my editor. Yeah.
Ekta?
Yeah. I think the editing was, I think, in some ways where we discovered the possibility of this film also, especially because of conversations with my editor and me. Having said that, I would say that while we were shooting, it was a very freewheeling process. At the same time, there were many occurrences. For example, if I had a dream, I knew that I wanted to shoot certain sequences exactly like the dream. So there would be a few things that were already falling into place. I didn't have a script, but those dreams became like kind of the script. And I had many of these landscapes across different things, and I didn't want to make it, as I said, one place after the other place, or divide them into chapters or seasons and all. So I just wanted to keep it as a kind of, not make it very easy for the viewer, to be honest, because some of the stories I had, I didn't want to just give them away. Because the interviews that we have are very long. It's like 3 hours, some of them. And I just felt like I'm not going to give that away so easily, because it was so personal. And sometimes I felt like I didn't have the consent to even be listening to some of it. But having said that, I feel because the nature of this engagement was very intimate, I stayed with many of the families that the workers came from. It kind of also informed me about the mood, which was mostly in my head. So it took very, very long to translate what I was thinking to my editor, because it's not a linear narrative. And what happened was that somehow we started putting different sequences together, and we were not in a very like kind of a hurry to find a very kind immediate thing. So we would do a chunk, take a break, then we would have, there was poetry that also guided us sometimes. So we would just, so it was a really unconventional process. And I would keep telling our bro a lot of stories that I had heard along the way. And he's like, just don't talk to me for 2 hours. I just need to be alone for a while. And then he'll put something together and I'll be like, okay, this is working. And then he's like, is this work? So a lot of the things worked like that. And it's kind of like there were moments when it felt like loose lucid dreaming there were between me and my editor, or it felt like we were having a conversation in some kind of another realm, because it was not connected to any kind of immediate reality or any kind of time boundness. So we did trip out quite a lot, and I do think that sound design plays also a very huge role, because that also in a way shaped. So when my editor was editing the film, we would also be very conscious of what kind of sounds would go with it. It wasn't like something that was done. It was done along with the edit in that sense. So it guided the edit a lot in many of the instances. But we knew a few things, that it would be a very silent film, not too many words, but really staying with looking at some kind of emotional continuity. So in our heads, there's a logic as to why something precedes or succeeds something, but it wasn't so important for the viewer to necessarily work with that narrative. And to allow that open interpretation also was something that I wanted to keep as a responsibility, not give it away so easily. So that was the test. So yeah, and the sound and the edit went hand in hand, and then it fell in place, I think, because even though there is no linear narrative, but I think there is a logic as to why someone is saying something, what is bouncing off from what, because in a way, I feel all of these people, including the crew and all of us, kind of formed this constellation for a brief while, and I just wanted to hold that time together in a way. And I think it did happen on the edit table for me. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's very interesting what you say, because I almost feel like you fought against like the documentary form, where it needs to be descriptive in, a way that you need to know the story of the protagonist very clearly. And both of you have actually done that, and you've done it so stunningly in your own sort of poetic way, whereas Rose has totally blurred the lines between fiction, reality, and it's so seamless in her film. You go from these very handheld camera raw footage of your family, Rose, to highly stylized fictionalized elements of your film, but they just talk to each other beautifully. And in your film, Ekta, I almost feel like you are telling the audience, look, I'm not going to give you any descriptive ideas, and you have to make your own ideas and participate in more of this emotion and feeling of the film. And it's almost countering what documentary form is in a traditional sense, and you've both done it really well. I want to touch upon, you talked about the soundscape, and I think that the fact that in your film, Ekta, that time and place is not apparent. The sound has really connected the entire film together from start to end. I mean, the amount of sound from nature that you've used, the cicadas, the rain, the ocean. Can you talk to us a bit about what went behind creating this extremely palpable atmosphere? It's visceral in a sense with the sound.
Yeah, I mean, the irony is that all the locations I was shooting in were very noisy locations. So Punjab is full of tractor sound, Bihar is full of horns, and Hyderabad is full of traffic. So I mean, I had to find ways to quieten the city in my head, or quieten the place in my head. So for example, and then think about what would this place, what other sounds are possible when it all quietens down. So for example, in Punjab, the chants at the Gurudwara would start very early in the morning, before the tractors would start, right? So I had to wake up very early, pay attention to those sounds, go and, or even in Chhattisgarh was the only place which was slightly quieter, and there was it's dense forests. But I just feel that I feel I really believe that turning to nature for me was the only way I could communicate or also come to terms with what I was grappling with without having to talk to anyone about it. So it was very long walks that I would take with my audio recorder, very basic and not really, I didn't do a good job. I need to do a better job in the coming film, but I somehow could find those hooks and those friends in nature, I feel. And I felt like all the stories that I was listening to from the people I met who are in my film, those I could find a correlation between what that environment of that place in my head and what these people were telling me. So, for example, if you heard the women wailing, it's not happening in isolation. It's happening with many other sounds. But I wanted to isolate that wailing so that it haunts the listener and it will stay in the memory of people. Now, I can go into why these people are wailing, what is the ritual, etc. But I think as long as the emotion of what that could convey, I mean, like the film has been screened in different places, and a lot of people have picked up very different meanings, which are pertaining to rituals from their land or their context, and I find that nature and all of these things are somehow strangely connected. It doesn't become mutually, it's not exclusive to just what I am seeing or feeling or anything. And I think people can correlate to that. And that has a universality. And within that, I would, and I really feel that it's the like there's also chants that you hear in the film, which are, I mean, it was just my first experiment with using music in the film, but I just felt like we needed some refrain. And I felt that at that point. I mean, if I was to revisit it, maybe I would go without even that and stick to just sound in that sense. So, yeah, that's really been, it really guided a lot of sequences also of the film, I would say. Yeah.
Rose, do you want to talk about the sound? I think there was some original soundtrack for your film, is it? The last few.
Yeah, I have my friends who design the sound and the music, and I think it's really nice. Like when I saw the city as the landscape, somehow there's some kind of the construction at the river, and now it's already built and it's like become the huge and kind of the big important park or something in the city now. But that time when I do the production, there's the construction, so I always heard the sound of like the making of the construction. And I really like when I saw the construction, it's hard to tell you that it's construct or it's like left behind. And I mean, and I don't know like how I relate that. And when it's come together with the sound of the water become bigger because it's big, and as Ekta said, it's nature. I mean, it's natural thing. So it's become holding and embrace everything together. So I think it's the main sound of the film, like the water and the construction and deconstruction in the way. So somehow maybe it's kind of just the starting point of making the sound. And I really like the ambient. I mean, I try to put like some sound that it's not really the sound to how to say, to invest much to feel emotional, just the sound of like or something that really happened there. But okay, just make it like more a bit powerful, but not like so emotional about that and it's make you cry, something like that. So it's more again like experiment with the landscape itself and also the story. And the last song, it's not original, so there's like the song like I think like 10 or nearly 15 years before, like my friend like introduced me to listen to the song, and the song name is like That Night. So somehow I decide the film to be just a one, like odd, like mundane one day, and then it's end with the song that called The Night. So I think it's quite like having a kind of a dialogue and a conclusion together.
Yeah, as you both talk, there's so many more parallels now that I'm thinking about, like even with the sound, like you said, not to make it like overly emotional, which is also, I think both your films are extremely compassionate, empathetic, but without like sensationalizing emotions, it's not over the top. Everything is so real. It's like watching both your films, like within me, I could feel like emotions coming up that felt like, yeah, like no natural almost. And it was really beautiful to see how you've both managed to show emotions in a very realistic, relatable, and almost pure sense, without sensationalizing anything, of either your protagonist or your own emotions that played out in the film. Rose, you chose to have this like protagonist, fictionalized protagonist, Aoi. How do you pronounce her name?
Ơi.
Oi. I was trying to say the O and I was like, oh, Oi.
Yeah.
And she's sort of your like on-screen proxy of sorts, no? Like you use the meta reality of the film, I felt, to sort of reconcile and revisit your own memories of your family, your mother, uh, your idea of what home and belonging is. And I felt almost that you use this proxy, this fictionalized character, to revisit feelings that you found it hard to deal with in reality. So you did it through her. Was that somehow the use of this fictional character, or am I imagining it too much?
I mean, it's like true too. I mean, like it depends on what you like, what you think about. But I mean, it's another like aspect after I am making it. But somehow I think like the fictional part is more the, how to say, it's another possibility, I think, to think of what's reality mean. I mean, what's really happened. Like, but if you fictionalize someone or just tell the story, how can you put it further? Or you go back, or you like, okay, maybe just a little forward somehow. So it's more like playing with the memory itself. But I think for me, I cannot call it like 100% fiction. And in another hand, like when you talk about documentary, I think I cannot call it pure documentary again, because at least you frame, I frame my dad already, and I see like, okay, dad, I think this one you look cool somehow, for example. But I didn't like choose other like mundane day of his life and nothing special somehow. So everything is kind of fiction and real in a sense for me. And I think it's really interesting because somehow like when I write a script for the fiction part, I use I copy some dialogue from my dad. But when you put it into like the actor voice, it's become like poetic, or it's become not real, and some of the audience said, oh, I don't like fictional part because it's kind of like pretending, or it's not the, and not that negative, but somehow you can say that it's fiction, so it's not real. But I mean, okay, I really copy from my dad. So I think for me it's really like practice and interesting to look like into this kind of, okay, what the boundary between documentary and fiction now. And even the documentary, maybe I just asked my dad, I mean, I guide him to talk about that. I know, oh, maybe he would talk about something, and then I can put it into the film. I mean, just guessing somehow. But I mean, when I shot him, I didn't plan, oh, you will be a film. I just recording like randomly too. But somehow like you are filmmaker, so I think it's kind of instinct of us, or even not filmmaker, but storyteller, to think or to guide, and you can guess like, okay, what he answered. Maybe it could be something you are interested, or you want to know the answer, so you raise the question that lead to your answer somehow. And okay, 100% he talked about it later. And then again, like for example, he talked about he went to Berlin, and what I really like, I don't know that you went to Berlin, where, when. So it's become like a surprise for me at that time. And then I use that kind of surprise to make it, okay, what can I fantasize more? Maybe I go to the photo album again and, okay, mom, can you show like that photo when he went to Berlin? And then I fictionalize him again from the photo. Oh, he looked cool at that time, something like that, for example. Yeah.
So did you write the fiction from your experience, or did the experience you experienced the fiction from your writing the truth?
Oh, it's really like philosophical question. Like,
I think you posed it in your director's statement, actually, Rose. I'm
oh, I
almost
forgot
wondering
already.
whether you wrote like the fiction was written from your own experience, or
Yeah,
did
yeah.
you experience the fiction while writing your own truth?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's really like a dialogue. Like as you said in the beginning, like we really think that okay, fiction is like something you write it, but somehow it's from your memory somewhere.
Yeah.
Or it's really like happened, but you just like reenact or remake it again. And even the documentary, maybe something maybe he's pretend, or someone like you think it's real, like maybe he's not that, but he just being captured in your handycam, so you think he's real. But
Totally.
I mean, like, but when you talk about reality, it's hard again. It's become like, oh, make a question again, like what is reality and what is not real. So I think it's really depends on like when you gather together with the film, what convey the feeling, or what convey the message. Yeah.
Ekta, for you, I wonder if like while making of the film, it was whether the film influenced sort of your understanding of loss and especially letting go of something that you so intimately hold, or was it a reflection of sorts on your own personal struggles or situations that you mentioned earlier, personal losses that you were grappling with, or was it a mix of both?
So I think I'm invisible in the film, in the sense that it's not really autobiographical in that sense. Like I like what Rose is saying, especially in the context of how would you write about your own self as a fiction? Is this fiction? Is it? So it's got this kind of blurring, as we were discussing already. And I feel in my case, it is a representative film. I am making a film about workers who have left their homes, come to Bangalore to work. I'm going back to their families, and I'm having to understand this context. And around the same time, these personal journeys are going on. Now, I feel in reality, it's not very cut up so neatly, now I'm going to deal with my personal loss. It's not cut up. So there's a lot of simultaneity, ambiguity, and contradictions that we may go through, right? And I feel I was trying to be very attentive to that simultaneity, where a lot of my dreams, so I believe it was also a state of dreaming. When I say that, I mean, like, even some parts of the film, I couldn't believe we were doing a few things that we were. And at the same time, I was like, and it is extremely real. So then one of the most interesting lines that stayed with me from a very important philosopher who said memory is fiction. His name is Rancière. He's a French philosopher. But when you think of memory as fiction, it doesn't really matter if it's also what I'm remembering and how I'm remembering. And it does not matter if this is the truth or not, beyond a point. So what? I'm still feeling it, right, in this manner. So if the grandmother in my film is talking specifically about, in the film, there's no dialogue at all that you hear her saying, but in my exchanges with her, she used to keep telling me about her son who's gone missing. But each time I met her, it was a very different memory. But the waiting was constant. And it was there. Like, it's not something that she's expressing to everyone every day. It's 20 years ago. But that doesn't mean she's not waiting, or that this loss is immediately going to translate into some kind of a dramatic reaction. So I felt these were very kind of fragile, long drawn, very stretched out in time, something that you can actually never solve or ever articulate to anyone. And I felt that those things, so when I'm talking to Dadi, it would be like, okay, she's told me this, and I would keep thinking about it. And as I'm listening to the story, I've fallen asleep. Something else is happening in my dream. And I'm like, okay, maybe I can think about this. So in a way, it was really like a reality and a dream merging into one another. And I actually think nothing is fiction, or everything is fiction in that sense. So this whole idea that documentary film itself is depicting the truth or like some kind of objective truth. I mean, I think we've already, even in cinema, documentary cinema has moved away from that, I think, for a while now. So I feel like we were that, I'm like, so now I don't know. So I don't feel that burden of, like today, if you ask me this question, I don't even know about the traditional documentary film anymore. I think there was that idea I mean, in India, at least we grew up seeing this in college and when we were doing film school, etc. But today, the documentary films are looking like fiction. Fiction is looking like documentary. I mean, it's like it's fun, like to think that form itself has shifted so much. And actually, this binary, it's probably a construction in our minds. And I do feel a lot of the experiences, especially of when people are sharing things about, that he left that day. I think about him, I miss him, or whatever these kind of, you can't place anything over here. So there is actually no truth to hold on to beyond a point, except to work with the memory of what is being said to me. So, and I think the dreams really played itself out it opened up, because it's also that when you spend deep time, I have this tendency of surrendering to a space and I just get lost. And that process of getting lost and just not getting distracted by anything, just staying with it, meditating on it, that also starts structuring your dreams. So then you start seeing the whole film in your head, and the only thing you have to do is now just put it to work. That's it. So, I mean, I could do this my whole life. I could keep dreaming and just making films. I mean, it's not that. I only wish it was cheap enough to do it. But yeah.
Sounds so easy. Keep dreaming and
Yeah.
making films, but it's
Yeah.
not that easy. I don't think Birha was that easy.
No, because it was tough. I mean, jokes apart, I think it was tough to receive a lot of things were quite tough. For example, many of the women I met, they were like, they've not returned. We don't know if they're missing. We don't know if they're dead. Now, when you're missing, it's a state of, we can't claim that they're dead or alive, or you're thinking they're alive, but we don't know if they're dead. So what is the state of missing? So one of the experiments that I tried to do is, if the missing people are not dead or alive, where could they be and how can I find them? So I would go to a poplar forest and I'm like, they're here. So I started making these fictions up in my head. And it's quite a childlike thing. We do this, I think, as children. And I just tried to be like, where could they go? Okay, they've not come home. They're not in the work site. They're not over here. I think they're here. They're inside the barks of these trees. So I'll stay in the bark of these trees. And in my head, I found them. So it's just this, it's kind of a weird hope. And at the same time, I don't know, a sense of acknowledging that loss.
Is it true that you found the person you were looking for in the film?
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
That's insane.
Yeah, after like 5 years, because I was looking, and actually he hadn't gone missing. Of course, there's in India, it's bizarre, right? Like, so there have been people who have, there were no railway tracks, right? So people have just left on foot and they don't know how to return. So there were many women that I met who and the train tracks have come now, but if someone was trying to find the way back home, they don't know how to get back because they're not sure as to where that house is. So this local train system and all is not registered in their head. They're already in the city. Now with Surinder, what happened was he was in Bangalore. Then I went looking for him. For a while, I was looking in the wrong village because there are, of course, in India, many Kamalapurs or many, there'll be many Ambedkar colonies. Like, so there are many, I can be looking in Ambikapur district, but there will be 4 Kamalapurs. So first few years, I was looking in the wrong Kamalapur. But then later on, as I was searching, I realized it's no need to get so hassled to find him. In my heart, I wanted to find him. But when I started making the film, we met one person who's like, don't worry about finding anyone, just keep searching. That's it. So it didn't become pertinent to the film that I was to find Surinder, but I kept going back because I still want to meet him and say I made this film. And eventually I found him, and it was tough. It was really tough to trace him. And I think he was too shocked to realize that I've been coming every year to look for him. Traveling this distance, and he's like, "What were you doing?" And I'm back home. So yeah, it was nice. And the interesting thing is, during the lockdown, one of the people you see in the film, his name is Parvez. Now, in his family, they think he's gone missing. But when he's met me, he's like, I left home, I ran away when I was 14 because my father slapped me and it was the most rudest thing he ever did. So he hasn't gone home in 14 years. But his parents back home think he's dead. So there's a photograph of him being dead, etc. And during the lockdown, I think everyone was talking about home, home, home. And somewhere he's like, "Can you call the police station?" I'm like, "How am I going to trace your family?" But I called the police station, I did all these things, and suddenly he could speak to his mom after 14 years. So this guy is the one who wants to go missing or has left home. But like suddenly this reunion happened, and he's like, I mean, of course, that's another story which I can make many films on Parvez, but this one is just really that kind of thing, you know. It's like it's such a chance for someone to actually get lost in your life, actually. And I really learned this from the workers and the way they move in the city, you know, that migration is, it's I'm here today, I'm gone tomorrow. You really don't care whether it's Bangalore, Hyderabad, Bombay. It's all one and the same because my work is repetitive. It's the same. It's the same. My work is the same. So sorry, just one last thing is that I think this
please.
idea of repetition is also something I was working on. Like there is everything that we do in our lives has a cycle and a repetitive nature of things. And when you keep doing the same thing every single, like for Dadi, it's milking the cow. There are 4-5 things that she does every day for the last 60 years or 70 years, however old she is. So this act of repetition also yields a particular state of being where it's no law. You can go into another zone altogether with this act of repetition. So I feel even with the workers, when they keep attending to this kind of mechanical reproduction of whatever that they're working toward, their labor, etc., I think by the time I'm conversing with them, I'm not really interested only in finding out how much did you get paid, why is your contractor so bad to you, what is going. So the set of questions can be very different. So perhaps we could ask different questions, and there can be very different things that you may stumble upon. Yeah.
It's interesting you talked about these actions that are sort of repeated constantly, these bodily gestures. It ties in very well to, you know, the idea of embodied memory, because somehow, you know, waiting takes place not just in the mind in your film, but in the body. So all these mundane actions somehow they talk so much about sort of what has gone missing.
And I think it's really sorry.
No, please, Rose.
I mean, it's really interesting when you talk about losing, but not in the sense of death. You know, when someone missing, you still have hope, and that's really haunt you too, because there's still hope that okay, he alive somewhere, even he's dead or not. But somehow when someone dead, someone died, it's just okay. We are more in the morning, we're sad, but we know that end is already end. We're just missing the past. But when someone like just disappear, or like hoping to meet them again, you still have hope, and even you think of future. So the future become that make you like repeat to do that again, repeat to do the same thing, because you still have like hope. The ritual you have hope.
What do you think is harder, death or missing?
I think missing.
I wonder, it's like your question, you know, in the film, Rose, that you ask, what I don't think you ask what is harder, but you ask what is the difference between sadness and sorrow. Did you answer that at the end? Because I know the monk answers it for you through your film, and he says it very beautifully about sadness being more temporary and sorrow being more permanent. And what did you get out of, I guess, through the process of the film, or how did you answer this?
I think it's kind of the burden of the language too somehow. Like I really like. I mean, in Thai, I think people can still like arguing. Okay, I think this one is more sad. This one is like something like that. But when you try to like translate in English, you have to okay, this one should be the bigger word. But I still don't know is the real, like the real word you like sadness or sorrow. But I think sad is more like it sounds like temporarily, like okay, I like the glass is broken, so I'm sad. Oh, this is my present for my friend. But the sorrow is more like death, like it's related to death or missing or something that how to say that the umbrella like up of you, like it's raining all the time. I don't know it. I try to visualize sorrow somehow. So for me, like sorrow maybe is bigger, but still now I really like when people like joke, my friends always joke me like, oh, this sentence when they like oh, think of this sentence when watching your film is we still argue that okay, what is more sad.
Yeah, I think even when I was putting together my concept note and I put like loss and grief together, and a lot of my friends were like, oh, but grief is much bigger than loss. And you're right, it's all like language, and you can get so kind of stuck up in the jargon and what it means, but then at the end of the day, it's how you're feeling and how you're reacting to it in your emotions. I'm going to check if there are any questions from the audience, since it's already 5:18 here. Wow, that went fast. So there's a question from Choi for both the directors. What are your upcoming projects? Are they related to the films Nakorn-Sawan and Birha? Who wants to go first?
Rose, go ahead. You have a project.
And it's really related to what Ekta said about missing. I'm doing the project about missing people, but somehow it's kind of like the first stage of writing. I mean, I have a draft, but when now the situation in Thailand, there's a political how to say, like the protest and everything about people who against the government and they are missing somehow. So I use not use, but somehow I want to write something about people who miss or who gone, but people who left behind still hope to meet them again. So as I told before, I think it's really interested that okay, death is the end and it's past already, but when you talk about missing or disappearance, it's still going on, and you live with that forever until you know that he dead or you met him, even he alive and you didn't haven't met him in real life yet, you still think that you're still questioning about the disappearance. So yeah, I think I hope that I will finish the project and answer the theme of disappearance and missing thing. Yeah.
Ekta?
Yeah, I mean, there's a missing sequence in my film because I was to take a truck drive with one of my friends who was a worker, and a cat crossed from right to left, after which he said, it's bad luck, the truck is going to break down, and the truck did break down. So I could never do that. I could never complete that journey. I want to go back and do that truck drive with him. And I do want to kind of explore this sexual desire that is left on the road, right? So it's not really contained in home and things like that. So it's really to look at what is the relationship between the road, the worker, and the people he may meet along the road. I have been trying to explore this not through a straightforward, I just want to try and see if there's a way to look at smell as a smell as in like odor, smell, and how do I convey the smell of this desire in cinema. I don't know if I will ever be able to achieve it, but I have a few thoughts and I'm just putting down my notes, and I don't want to rush it. I want to really go deep into it. And let's see, I think if I can do it, the missing sequence shall come out.
And how is it for both of you working given the pandemic? Rose is like, no.
I mean, it's really you have more time, but somehow it's time with not the good quality time. I mean, you have to worry about something else too. So it's really stuck with some like creativity. Like for example, if you went to the lab and then there are Zoom again, like you have to Zoom every day, and you need some physical thing. Yeah, as I told, like conversation, dialogue, workshops, or whatever. I think that we still need physical contact. Yeah, but I mean, in another way, you have time, so at least you can still write something. You can write anywhere, anytime. But yeah, maybe the situation may be like just more pressure than normal situation. Yeah.
As for me, I've really been working the whole of last year. And in fact, specifically looking at the workers, it's been very, very, very bad, the conditions. So we've been trying to hold the authority, because now suddenly the migrant worker became the central figure in India, right? And it was appalling to see some of the media representation around the migrant worker. But there was a lot of things that, and because we've been working with people constructing the metro, we just had a lot of work. So we were out and about and mostly sending out reports to the officials to ensure that basic things could be taken care of. It's really taken a toll on us, and we've already made 3 films in the process, which we're still currently editing. But it's just, I could do this my whole lifetime. I mean, because there is just so much that is left unsaid. And no matter how much I don't know, like it just feels like it's like a lifetime project. I'm very committed to this area, and I feel I've learned a lot, and I feel it's my duty to continuously be alert to this to labor, to the migration trajectories, as well as this kind of it, because it haunts me. It's directly affecting me. So it was difficult to stay home and also at the same time think that it's just what's going on out there. So we just took our bikes and we were on the street looking at what's going on, and it was very tough. And it's still ongoing now that the lockdown has opened up. It's still bad, and I don't know, it's a second wave. It's a mess, and so we have work. That's it.
What are you doing to stay sane, Ekta?
Yeah,
what are you doing to? What do you do? What's your practice to stay in your body?
I mean, I just started studying Urdu. Today was my first class. I do Vipassana. I do my own, like, I'm trying to paint. I'm trying to do like things that don't involve much talking to people in English.
Sorry. So
I'm kidding. No, because there's so many. No. I don't mean it in this sense. But you know what I mean? Like, because the conversations can get so circular sometimes that I'm like, oh God, like, it's a loop. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Thinking about anything in English, I'm trying very hard to stop it. Training myself to cut that. And we are all stuck with this language now for the rest of our life.
So that's for another conversation on our colonial history and another film on that. I wonder if there's a question with our Zoom, anybody in the Zoom participants before I wrap this up. Oh, thank you, Sel, Eugenio. He says, not a question, but it was very nice opportunity to listen to everyone. Thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for joining. Ladies, thank you so much for being part of this process for the past 3 months that I've been in touch with you and back and forth, and finally having this culmination of meeting both of you, even though it's via Zoom. And I'm really looking forward to all your new projects and inshallah to meeting as well soon in person. So good luck and thank you so much for being here with us. And thank you to the Oyun team for hosting us and for putting all this together for us and providing space to to show these beautiful films and to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
I would like
Take
Rose's
care.
films to celebrate.
Yeah, me too. I would like
I
to
will
see
connect
it.
everyone.
Thank you. Love to see it. Yeah.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Sana.
Ciao.
Take care.
Thank
You
you.
come to Bangalore and meet us.
Yes.
And I hope I can go to Berlin.
See you soon, Rose. Bye.
Bye.
Right.